Welcome to Kara's Cures, where we explore the cutting edge of wellness. I'm Kara Sundlun. Could your child be highly sensitive? Actually, 20% of people are, but these kiddos need a different kind of parenting. And I am here to speak with child therapist Megghan Thompson. She specializes in HSCs for short, about how to make changes as a parent to help your child thrive and end the meltdown cycle. Megghan, thanks for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, first of all, this might be a new term for folks. What is a highly sensitive person?
Sure. So highly sensitive people fit a personality trait with 4 components. So as you mentioned, 20% of the population notices that they have big feelings. They might be emotionally responsive or reactive, highly empathetic. They can also have deep emotions and process those emotions deeply and think deeply about circumstances. So I like to explain to parents that your child might have thoughts that seem wise beyond their years. Their peers might ask a question and then ask another one, whereas your child is going to ask questions and then ask 20 more down that rabbit hole of just thinking about a situation or a circumstance or even worries that seem to go on and on beyond what a typical child might contemplate. And then the third component of the personality trait is the intense, being easily overstimulated. So we think about one thing that parents often notice as a child for their highly sensitive kid is that big noises can startle them. They can be difficult, having a hard time with sensations. Typically parents will think of this only from a standpoint of sensory needs, noises, touch sensations, smells, etc. But one thing that parents can often miss is that a child can be easily overstimulated by a highly active day or even a very boring day. And so that's one part of the personality. And then lastly is that parents need to notice that their child is easily and more susceptible to small changes, subtleties, if you will, in their environment. And so that can be, again, back to sensory needs and in terms of an itchy tag, just driving them nuts more intensely than a typical child, all the way to being able to notice that Auntie Jane, they haven't seen in 6 months, cut her hair differently. And, you as an adult didn't pick it up, but your child did. Mm-hmm. So those small details, bringing it back to being highly detail oriented from the beginning of the trait.
Right. And this is not a disorder, right? It's a personality trait
Correct.
That occurs in about 1/5 of the population.
That's correct. And over 100 different species as well. So this is a trait that has been found in humans as all the way through to fruit flies, horses, dogs, etc. And so when we look at the personality trait, just like introversion and extroversion as common personality traits that people can understand and observe in themselves or in others, the highly sensitive personality trait is not a mental health disorder. With that being said, highly sensitive people make up about 50% of the population that ends up in therapy. And then as a result, one can deduce they can end up with a misdiagnosis if the therapist or the mental health professional is not familiar with the personality trait.
Okay, but let's talk about what parents might be struggling with, because there's obviously some advantages. They can be very empathic and they can be very creative and inquisitive, but it's really the behavior patterns, especially among kids, that really cause a problem for parents, and they end up coming to see you. So what are some of the behavior challenges?
Sure. So my specialty and that of our team, we help parents eliminate the daily meltdowns. So some parents may deal with their child's big emotions that lead to explosive behavior, hitting, kicking, screaming, throwing their body on the floor, running away, slamming doors, hitting siblings, etc. And those meltdowns can last anywhere between 5 minutes, 30 minutes, even an hour or more. And parents obviously can be quite exhausted if this is happening on a daily basis. With that being said, you might see multiple times a day for children having these meltdowns, or a differentiation between a child being able to hold it together at school and then only melting down at home. And parents can notice that their child on the flip side, could also be isolating. So we see some highly sensitive kids, I affectionately call them icicle children, where they just freeze up and can really shut down. And that can be quite puzzling and difficult for parents as well, because you feel like you're knocking at the door trying to help your child loosen up and communicate with you what might be stressing them out. And it's quite a challenge when parents aren't able to feel connected to their children in this respect as well.
So there's some maybe good news and maybe troubling news in that what you work on is, you say it's really so important that the parents parent a certain way. A lot of times we want to get help for our kids, but you say in the case of highly sensitive children, to end the meltdowns, you have 5 steps. I know you put them on your website, you talk about them on your videos and your podcast, but it's really about parent training to end the meltdowns.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So highly sensitive children actually change the way that they see the world, respond to the world, and perceive themselves much more effectively through a change in the parent-child relationship. So we can get scientific here and notice there are 2 terms that are really important in terms of the work that we do. All of what we do here at MTC in the coaching that we provide to parents is research-backed. The first component is the understanding of vantage sensitivity. A highly sensitive child actually has a higher vantage point to their environment. So when we change that environment to be more positive, and a parent finally feels like they understand their child, as a result, the child finally feels understood. Obviously, parents, with highly sensitive children or not, love their children and are doing the best they can. But without these skills, it can feel very draining, exhausting, aka a negative environment, right? So when we shift into a positive environment, the highly sensitive child feels better about themselves, feels more capable of solving their problems, and can use their beautiful, detailed brain to solve those problems creatively. So as a result, we see highly sensitive kids demonstrate their skill set and generalize it through the home, community, and the school. And that's one piece that we highlight. The next piece that we highlight is noticing that highly sensitive kids are actually more susceptible to changes in their environment than non-highly sensitive kids. That means that parents changing the way that they parent actually has a much greater impact, and in terms of a highly sensitive child's capacity to change their behavior, than a non-highly sensitive child. So it can be counterintuitive to the typical way for parents to shift a child's behavior that's pretty intense.
Okay. So what works? Mm-hmm. What works to break the meltdowns? Because sometimes it could be, just tantrums when they're little, but it gets quite explosive as they're getting older. And I know that's difficult, not just on the parents, but the kids, because they often feel bad after they've melted down.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So parents have to start first with being able to notice how their behavior is impacting their child's behavior. Now, obviously, like I mentioned, dealing with daily meltdowns is exhausting. So we teach our clients to be able to manage their own emotional state, to do that consistently and effectively in a way that doesn't feel like they have to pause their day and meditate for hours and hours and just hold their breath or white knuckle through. And then on top of that, we introduce the opportunity to share playful parenting strategies, make that connection focused on play, which is the child's language, so that children can feel like their parents are speaking the same language. And as a result, parents and children not only feel more positive because we're now being more playful, but children feel more capable in changing their behavior, which as a result leads us to the next stage. For our clients, we then teach them the opportunity to share feedback with their child and their behavior that they need to change in a way that's more systematic, that combats shame. Highly sensitive people, highly sensitive children as well, are more likely to respond to the world in a shameful, embarrassed, or guilty way when they are frustrated, upset, or overwhelmed. With that being said, highly sensitive kids can really show anger first. So we teach parents how to break that anger barrier, break the frustration barrier, so that their children are able to receive that feedback and then see themselves capable of changing their behavior.
So maybe you could give us a little bit of example. I'm thinking a lot of moms are thinking that the stress points, say getting out the door in the morning, or a child can't have something they want, or they've had a busy day and they're melting down, they're yelling, they're throwing things, they're all those things. So how would the parent respond in the correct way if the child is an HSC, in a way to break that cycle and the anger?
Mm-hmm. So this is a bit of a formula. And I'll give you the short answer, but it's more complicated than that, right? But when we think about a parent directly who is trying to get their kid out the door, usually our own response is get with the program, kid, right? We just want to get out the door. We're worried. We're thinking 3 steps ahead. What if, what is my boss going to say? If I can't get my kid to school on time, then my boss, I'll end up being late for work, et cetera, et cetera. And so we teach parents to be able to slow down time, right? Just like if we're in a scary event or we watch our toddler trip and fall, time slows down. We have that opportunity to be able to slow down time. Then with the specific skills, we teach our parents to set particular limits, help the children move through the specific step that needs to happen next. And, say, for example, that's tie your shoes, right? The parent is taught exclusively with scripts at first to be able to recite different words that engage playfulness with the child. So the child is able to focus on putting their shoes on, feel capable of that. Because what's really important is that highly sensitive kids, highly sensitive people read the room, right? So if you are in this go, go, go mentality, your child is going to raise their adrenaline and cortisol along with you, and they won't be able to respond when you're giving them, choices or trying to make it playful or, just giving time, right? We're not asking you to just repeat the same thing over and over and over again and expect a different result. So I like to reference more of a recipe in terms of the different stages of growth that a parent needs to engage in and alongside their child as well.
Okay. And so you've for help for parents, because obviously these kids are, it's not a disorder, but it's something that can be disruptive in a family. You've said you've had success with a boot camp, about 10 sessions, and parents are really noticing that the meltdowns actually stop?
So boot camp is not 10 sessions. It's 10 weeks long in the sense that the course material that we provide to our parents is consistent over 10 weeks with drips. And then we coach our parents multiple times a week. And we have some support access to our coaches nearly 24/7. We take Sundays off, so 24/6. So parents are able to troubleshoot, communicate, and consistently receive feedback on what they're doing in order to notice what is working, in order to notice the wins and celebrate those wins, and then know how to repeat them. Parents of highly sensitive kids can often see wins or effective behavior from their child as a fluke, and that's one of the things that we help parents notice when our child is behaving in a way that we want them to, aka effectively, getting their needs met effectively. We teach parents how to replicate that consistently. And when you have quick access to experts who have been doing this for 10 years, and many of us have master's degrees, it's a heck of a lot easier to turn that around faster. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and this is something that I know was researched. There was, you'll know it's escaping me, but there was a famous book, The Highly Sensitive Person. So the research started out with a researcher out in California, just about highly sensitive people in general, and this is now talking about it with kids, right?
So actually, Elaine Aron coined the term in 1990s. With that being said, the highly sensitive trait was discovered and documented by Carl Jung over 100 years ago in the 1920s. And Elaine Aron coined the actual term, but Carl Jung started to write about it in his teachings. And he's a famous psychologist, studied under Freud. And with that being said, in the 60s, Marsha Linehan designed and developed a treatment, started her research in the 1960s, studying highly sensitive people who developed chronic suicidality and chronic self-harm. And she designed a treatment called dialectical behavior therapy. It's what I have the training in as a clinician. And so the trait has been around for over a century, documented for about a century, and then was coined in terms of a name developed in the 1990s.
Yeah, so people might be familiar with cognitive behavioral therapy or even DBT. Is that what your coaches use only with children, or is it adapted in a different way?
So, good question. DBT is actually much more complicated than CBT. It is a four component therapy. So while it derived itself from CBT, it requires much more advanced training from a therapist. So my training started several years ago in understanding DBT and contemplating all of that and how to apply it in a therapy session. And then over the years, having that clinical knowledge as well as the personal knowledge being raised alongside a highly sensitive child. My sister's highly sensitive. And then also my specialty as a play therapist, a child play therapist, working with traumatized youth all through my career, I was able to design our own curriculum. And so our coaches have learned, digested what I've designed. And while it is informed through DBT, play therapy, and typical family dynamics in terms of my own personal experience and witnessing many families over the last decade plus, the understanding of DBT is one of the tenets of what we use to support parents of sensitive kids, because that particular type of therapy has been researched for many years. And because I'm a parent coach, I'm not providing mental health therapy to clients internationally.
Okay, great. But this is something that if you feel like it applies to you now, a lot of parents who have been maybe struggling might have another diagnosis. Maybe their child is on the spectrum or ADHD. There's other things that could affect emotional regulation, which seems to be the part that parents struggle with the most. Can you be a highly sensitive person and also have those diagnoses, or are you just more concerned that sometimes the diagnoses are wrong or not fitting?
Both can be true. So parents of highly sensitive kids can also notice that their kids are autistic. We help parents understand that. I have many resources on my website as well as through our podcast for parents to understand the difference between autism and the highly sensitive personality trait. With that being said, most of the parents that come to us notice that their child doesn't fit the criteria for autism, but because the personality trait's major side effects when a child is growing up in an invalidating environment where parents simply have a mismatched skill set level, those parents notice that their child doesn't fit the criteria, but their child is presenting, aka with the meltdowns, in a way that seems like their child might fit that criteria. So they come to us saying, I'm pretty sure my kid doesn't fit the autism spectrum, but I don't know what is going on here. And then once they listen to what we have to say in our trainings and all of that, they start to notice that they feel more at home in terms of what they finally observed in their child's personality.
So this is something that more and more parents might want to be aware of, because it's something that you said, the old school parenting that many of us grew up with, of come on, get with the program, or I think you call it affectionately, suck it up parenting. It really doesn't work for these highly sensitive children, and it will make things worse.
Yes. So one thing that is really important for parents of sensitive kids to notice is that you can fall into a pendulum of suck it up parenting or okay, fine parenting. Like I give up, I'm exhausted. So when you're in that paradigm of telling your kid it isn't this big of a deal, you need to turn it around. I don't know why you're making a mountain out of a molehill. Your behavior is ridiculous. 7-year-olds don't act like this, whatever it is. When you're at that heightened level of exhaustion, exasperation, frustration, you might say those things to your kid, or you might think like that and then parent in a way that just, says, let's go, come on. I can't deal with this anymore. That requires a lot of energy from a parent and fosters frustration. So what often happens in a parent relationship is that parents can swing to the other side of just, fine, I can't deal with it. I can't fight this battle with you anymore. Go ahead and not go to school, or you don't need to do your homework. I can't deal with it, or we won't do chores today. Or in parents in two-parent households, we can see one parent on one side of the pendulum and the other parent on the other. And that can drive a pretty significant wedge in a marriage or a co-parenting relationship. So what we notice is that we need to find a middle ground. There has to be an opportunity for children to stretch outside their comfort zone, to do hard things because they're fully capable and they're not fragile. And for us to notice that our highly sensitive children may need to be paced differently into stretching outside of that comfort zone. As a result, sensitive kids feel understood. They feel validated, but they also feel capable of growing. And that's really important, because when we're parenting sensitive kids or non-sensitive kids, we want our children to feel that the world is their oyster, right? And in order to do that, they need to feel like they can keep going in their life's journey.
Yeah.
And stretching outside their comfort zone requires a specific set of skills that a non-highly sensitive child might not need as much.
Okay. All right. Well, we want to let people know that there's more support because you have a lot of resources for people to help break the meltdown cycle. You can access, you have free training on your website, MegghanThompsonCoaching.com, the 5 steps. You have a podcast that maybe people want to listen to learn more, Parent Your Highly Sensitive Child Like a Ninja. Very memorable title. And I know you're also on social media with Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. I came across you because of your blogs. So it's really something, if you're hearing like, this sounds just like my kid, this is important for parents to look into, because getting a handle on this now can really help the child develop into a confident adult, and not doing it could have the reverse effect.
That's correct.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your information. I hope that folks who are listening, moms, dads, grandparents, they can find out a little bit more information about the highly sensitive child, and you might even notice you're a highly sensitive person as well.
And that's A-okay, right?
Right. All right. Just need a little bit more understanding how we know this. All right. Megghan, thank you so much. We appreciate you being here. And for those folks who want more information on the cutting edge of wellness, you can also watch CURES on the WFSB streaming app. We have many more episodes right here, so have fun watching those. And you can also follow me on social media at Sundlun. I post them there. Have a great day.